Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting straight to the core of something many of you have asked about. Understanding and really using your ADHD traits to thrive in your career and, the workplace.
Exactly. We've looked at the sources you shared, and our focus is, well, it's really on pulling out those key actionable insights, those sort of aha moments, things that give you a clearer path to working smarter, not just harder, with ADHD.
Yeah, moving beyond just like talking about ADHD.
Right. Getting into real-world strategies you can actually use.
So think of this as your shortcut to understanding how ADHD really plays out professionally. We'll be covering a lot of ground, from finding the right kind of work environment where your strengths can truly shine,
Yeah, that's crucial.
to why we maybe need to rethink how we even measure success on the job.
hmm
We'll also explore the surprising power of human connections,
Yeah.
focus techniques that work with your natural rhythms, not against them,
Which is so important.
the possibilities of, striking out on your own, how to best contribute in a team, clear communication strategies, and making smart career choices.
Definitely some fresh perspectives coming your way, I think.
Right.
Let's dive right into those inherent strengths that often come with ADHD and the kinds of work environments where these aren't just tolerated, but are, genuine assets.
Okay, so from what we've seen, a big one is this incredible wellspring of creativity, right? And the ability to generate ideas, sometimes seemingly out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's like your mind is constantly making connections, exploring possibilities that might not occur to others. That branching thought process.
And there's also this intense curiosity, this real drive to dig into new things, which can lead to really unique insights and perspective.
What's fascinating is how perfectly these strengths align with certain industries and roles. I mean, obviously creative fields come to mind, but also any job that requires innovative problem solving, where that out-of-the-box thinking and, truly novel ideas is a real advantage. Environments that, foster innovation and provide the freedom to explore different approaches, that's where individuals with ADHD can really excel.
But it's also pretty clear that this can be a tough fit with more traditional workplaces, right? Places that really value efficiency and like everyone doing things in a predictable way.
Oh, absolutely. In those settings, those same ADHD traits can unfortunately be seen as obstacles, as liabilities even. The typical workplace often isn't set up to support neurodiversity. The idea that neurological differences like ADHD are just natural variations, not deficits. What's a strength in one context can easily be perceived as a weakness in another.
Which just highlights how crucial it is for you to find environments that genuinely understand and, well, appreciate your unique way of thinking.
Exactly. And it brings up this interesting point. Companies often say they want out-of-the-box thinkers, but what we're seeing is that they often mean like small incremental improvements.
Right, just polishing the edges a bit.
Whereas someone with ADHD might bring genuinely groundbreaking ideas, things way outside the usual parameters.
So the challenge then becomes how to get those truly novel ideas heard by the right people within an organization.
Exactly. There's often a filtering effect, especially through middle management, where those unconventional ideas might get dismissed simply because they don't fit the established norms, or maybe they just seem too risky.
So what are some ways around that? Our sources point to a couple of paths, yeah.
Yeah, one strong possibility is entrepreneurship. Creating your own space where you call the shots. That gives you maximum freedom.
Makes sense.
Another is actively seeking out leaders within existing companies who have a reputation for being open-minded and, supportive of different ways of thinking. They do exist.
Finding those champions.
Right. And ultimately, companies themselves need to recognize the inherent value of experimentation and build internal systems that genuinely encourage innovation, not just pay lip service to it.
Which leads us perfectly to our next point, why we need to rethink how we even evaluate job performance. Because if traditional workplaces aren't designed for these strengths,
Then their evaluation methods probably aren't either.
exactly. What's fascinating here is the insight into traditional Japanese evaluation systems, which have historically valued the generalist, someone who performs consistently, sort of evenly across all tasks.
Okay.
This emphasis on uniformity can be incredibly difficult for individuals with diverse skill sets, like those with ADHD, who often have areas of real, spiky strengths, alongside areas where they might struggle more. Think less consistent across the board and more exceptional in key areas.
Right. So someone might be brilliant at coming up with new ideas, but might find it tough to stick with routine, detail-oriented work, like really tough.
Precisely. And in a system that expects everyone to be equally good at everything, they're going to end up with an unfair assessment of their overall contribution, aren't they?
Yeah, it feels inherently unfair. And our sources emphasize that in Japan, there's been a strong cultural value placed on everyone working in a similar way. This has made it particularly challenging to develop evaluation systems that fairly recognize and reward individuals with different strengths. Even global companies operating there often adopt similar uniform standards, believe it or not.
Wow. So how do we start to shift away from this model then? What's the recommendation?
Well, the Kai, according to our sources, is to move away from this expectation of across-the-board even performance and instead evaluate people based on their specific areas of expertise.
Okay, focus on the peaks.
Exactly. So if you bring exceptional creativity to the table, your evaluation should really focus on the impact and originality of those ideas. If you excel at coordinating complex projects, your efficiency and precision in that area should be the primary focus.
That makes so much sense. It's about creating work environments that actually need that innovative thinking or focus on those shorter, more engaging tasks, which, as we talked about, can be a great fit for how many individuals with ADHD naturally work.
And this isn't just about benefiting individuals with ADHD, though it certainly does. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about recognizing that pretty much every employee has their own unique mix of strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, everyone does.
So moving towards more specialized roles and truly leveraging those individual characteristics can ultimately benefit the entire organization.
It almost makes you think about times, you might have been in a situation where there was this push to kind of bring everyone's weaknesses up to the same level, which in the process actually dampen the impact of your real strengths. You end up mediocre at everything.
That's a very common experience, unfortunately. Revising these evaluation standards isn't just a change in process. It really signals a shift in the company culture towards genuinely valuing and utilizing the diverse talents that individuals bring. It's for the overall success of the organization.
It's about redefining how we measure what matters.
Yes. Focusing on that specific expertise within a role rather than some generic assessment of, say, project management skills across the board.
And it's interesting that our sources include a personal story about a manager who was much more focused on fixing perceived weaknesses than on amplifying existing strengths.
Yeah, and it really frames that as an outdated and, frankly, ultimately ineffective way of thinking.
It absolutely is.
The core insight here is that focusing on what people do best is the more effective route, both for individual growth and satisfaction and for the organization's success as a whole. It just makes sense.
Okay, so we've talked about finding the right environment and evaluating people based on their strengths. Now let's dive into something that our sources highlight as particularly crucial, especially for individuals with ADHD, building success through human connections.
Right. This is fascinating. There's a contrast drawn between individual investors and business leaders. While both are involved in investment in different ways, their approach to people is fundamentally different. Well, individual investors often operate more independently, right? Focusing on their own assets, minimal interaction required sometimes. But business leaders, especially entrepreneurs, are deeply connected to people. They rely heavily on collaboration to achieve their broader goals.
Ah, I see. And the analogy our sources used really resonated with me, comparing individual investors to parents who just provide financial support versus business leaders who are more like parents actively involved in daily conversations, fostering growth, supporting the whole family unit.
It's a powerful comparison, isn't it?
Hmm.
Because it underscores that business leaders create a much wider impact through employment, customer value, societal influence, unlike the often more contained personal success of an individual investor.
And crucially for our discussion,
Yes, crucially, these connections bring in fresh perspectives, new ideas, unexpected synergies, things you wouldn't get working in a vacuum.
and for individuals with ADHD, these relationships seem to take on an even greater importance.
Absolutely. Given the natural variability in focus and performance that can come with ADHD, the ability to rely on others to complement your strengths and support areas where you might struggle becomes incredibly valuable, especially in team settings where collaboration is essential to get things done, to deliver.
It really highlights the importance of that mutual understanding and what our sources refer to as being open about your ADHD traits, potentially.
Yes, being upfront about your traits, if you're in a supportive context, can lead to better support and smoother, more effective teamwork. And it's important to remember, these connections don't always have to be face-to-face in today's world.
Right. Online works too.
Online interactions can be just as valuable as long as there's consistent communication and, genuine trust building happening. Leverage human connections not just for support, but as a vital source of ideas, motivation, and that irreplaceable trust elements AI just can't replicate.
There's also this interesting point about how business really thrives on human connection, sometimes even beyond the quality of the product or the strength of the brand. It's that fundamental, I want to buy this from this person factor.
Exactly. Trust and emotional connection are elements that AI, for all its advancements, simply cannot replicate. When customers feel understood by a real person, feel that connection, it creates a powerful bond that really drives business success.
And it's not just about customers, is it? Our sources also emphasize how human conversations are a critical source of motivation and new ideas.
Yeah, something else that AI really struggles to replicate in a meaningful way.
How so?
Well, think about those emotional exchanges in human conversations. The trust, the empathy, even the friendly challenges or bits of competition. These are all things that fuel growth and push us forward. It's about finding the right balance between, say, AI support for tasks and the dynamic energy of human interaction.
But ultimately,
Ultimately, the most successful people, especially in business, are those who cultivate deep relationships built on trust.
so how can individuals with ADHD really make the most of these connections then? What's the practical advice?
Well, it requires openness, a willingness to be understood, empathy, and importantly, embracing vulnerability, especially when it comes to sharing your challenges and how you work best. That can feel risky, but it builds trust.
And these relationships, in turn,
They encourage personal growth by broadening your perspective, offering opportunities to learn new skills from others. The core insight is that trust and cooperation through these connections enable achievements that go far beyond what any individual talent or effort could accomplish alone. It's synergy.
okay. Now let's shift gears and talk about something I think will really resonate with many of you. Work styles that actually leverage those natural waves of focus that many individuals, and perhaps especially those with ADHD, experience.
Right. The key to understand here is that focus isn't a constant state, is it? It comes in waves. And for individuals with ADHD, these waves can be more pronounced and at times maybe less predictable. So instead of fighting against this, which is exhausting, our sources advocate for understanding and harnessing these natural fluctuations.
Right, because there are so many things that can affect our ability to focus, aren't there? Our energy levels, our surroundings, even our body's natural circadian rhythms. So this idea of expecting consistent level performance throughout the entire day just doesn't really align with how we actually function.
It really doesn't. It's setting yourself up for frustration. A much more effective approach is to align your most important demanding tasks, the deep work, with the times when you naturally experience peak focus,
Okay.
and then schedule more routine or less critical tasks for periods when your focus might naturally dip.
So that might look like, say, tackling creative projects or complex problem solving in the morning if that's your peak time,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then handling emails or more administrative stuff in the afternoon when energy might be lower.
Precisely. And it's also crucial to anticipate those dips in focus and to intentionally schedule breaks. Don't just power through. Techniques like the Pomodoro technique, with its structured work intervals and short breaks, can be really helpful in managing these waves of concentration and preventing burnout.
Our sources also highlight the importance of really tuning into your own personal focus patterns, don't they?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
By observing when you tend to be most focused, under what conditions you work best, maybe it's complete silence, maybe it's with background noise, you can then tailor your work environment and your schedule accordingly.
And the payoff is?
Well, it not only boosts your efficiency, but also reduces stress and supports better long-term mental well-being and performance. It's about sustainability.
It sounds like it's about working with your natural tendencies rather than trying to force yourself into some artificial, maybe neurotypical standard.
Precisely. And this respect for individual rhythms benefits everyone, honestly. But for individuals with ADHD, it can be particularly empowering. It can reduce that internal pressure and self-doubt that can arise from trying to maintain a level of consistent focus that just isn't natural for them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. This idea of working on your own terms naturally leads us to our next topic. Considering self-employment or freelancing as a career path.
Yes, self-employment and freelancing are increasingly appealing alternatives to traditional employment, and they can be particularly attractive for individuals with ADHD who might struggle with those rigid structures and uniform expectations we talked about.
Right. The primary advantage here seems to be the freedom, doesn't it? Freedom to operate outside those strict frameworks and really concentrate on your areas of strength.
Exactly. Because freelancing allows you to really specialize in the areas where you excel, to pursue work that you actually enjoy, whether that's those bursts of creative tasks or shorter, more engaging projects that often align well with ADHD traits.
And then there's the flexibility to manage your own schedule in a way that really complements those natural peaks and troughs of focus we were just discussing.
Perfect alignment, yeah. Of course, it's important to be aware of the potential instability that comes with self-employment income fluctuations, the need to sort out your own benefits
Yeah,
that requires careful financial planning.
definitely.
And strong self-management skills are essential, although our sources point out that you can always outsource those more challenging administrative tasks like accounting or scheduling. Play to your strengths.
And I found it really interesting how our sources broaden the idea of freelancing beyond just those typical outsourced tasks like writing or design.
Yes, the concept of freelance professionals stepping into managerial roles, particularly to address inefficiencies in areas like middle management, what they call person-dependent management, meaning management that relies heavily on one individual's specific style or knowledge, making it inefficient and hard for others to navigate.
Ah,
That offers a really innovative perspective. These freelance managers can bring fresh, objective insights and address these issues in a way that might be difficult for someone inside the company culture to do.
it seems like the whole landscape of freelancing is evolving, moving towards these more fluid professional units and skill-based partnerships. Less about just hiring a person, more about hiring a capability.
That's right. It emphasizes the need for individuals to have a very clear understanding of their own skills and to be adaptable to changing market demands. This also has implications for how we think about education and career development.
How so?
Well, they need to evolve to support this more diversified approach to work, moving away from the traditional model of, lifelong employment with a single company towards embracing side projects, portfolio careers, multiple skill sets.
So the ultimate takeaway here seems to be that adaptability and independence are crucial mindsets for the future, both for individuals navigating their careers and for the companies themselves needing that flexibility.
Absolutely. Adaptability is key. Now, let's shift our focus to what happens when you are working within a team structure. How do you optimize roles to really leverage everyone's strengths, including your own, especially if you have ADHD?
This is a big one because our sources suggest that while the idea of maximizing strengths in her team sounds great in theory, it's something that surprisingly few managers actually do effectively in practice.
Yeah, it's often due to a combination of factors. Managers might be overwhelmed, they might lack the training to really assess individual talents accurately, or they could be operating within a company culture that still expects everyone to kind of fit a uniform mold.
And this leads to,
This can lead to individuals being assigned to roles or tasks that don't really align with their natural abilities or even their interests.
and that can have a really negative impact, right? Not just on the individual's experience, their morale, but on the overall performance of the team.
Precisely. Optimizing roles effectively requires trust and open communication about individual strengths and weaknesses. And that can often be lacking due to time constraints or just a reluctance to be vulnerable.
People might hesitate to admit where they struggle.
Or managers might not actively seek out that kind of feedback or know what to do with it if they get it.
So, what are some potential solutions to this? How can teams get better at it?
Well, our sources suggest things like integrating more objective assessment tools, not as the only answer, but as part of the picture, and establishing regular feedback systems specifically geared towards role optimization.
But that can be challenging to implement.
It can be, especially in traditional top-down organizations. Often, employees are still treated more like interchangeable resources to fill gaps, rather than individuals with unique talents to be nurtured.
The idea of forming more flexible project-based teams where roles are really defined by the specific skills needed for that project seems like a much more effective approach.
It does. It offers more opportunities to really leverage individual strengths and move away from those rigid departmental structures. Failing to optimize roles can lead to dissatisfaction, burnout, higher employee turnover.
Whereas getting it right,
Getting it right can significantly boost productivity, job satisfaction, and overall team performance. It's a win-win.
and for individuals with ADHD specifically, whose traits can be quite distinct, that creativity and quick problem solving versus maybe a tendency to struggle with more Meticulous, detail-oriented task, thoughtful role assignment becomes even more critical, doesn't it?
Absolutely critical.
Ah.
For example, assigning someone with ADHD to lead a brainstorming session where their rapid idea generation can really shine, while having other team members focus on the detailed planning and execution afterwards, that can create a much more balanced and effective team dynamic.
So it's about conscious design of the team roles.
Yes. Ultimately, role optimization should be a flexible, ongoing process that adapts to individual traits, team dynamics, and the evolving needs of the project. It fosters true collaboration and collective success.
Okay, so we've covered how to work and how to optimize your role within a team. Now let's talk about something that can be a real hurdle: how to communicate your needs and your way of working effectively to others, especially when you have ADHD. This touches on disclosure.
This is a really important area, and yeah, our sources highlight the initial challenge of deciding whether to even disclose an ADHD diagnosis in the workplace.
Mm.
Particularly, they note, in a culture like Japan's, where it can unfortunately still carry a significant stigma.
Yes, that strong emphasis on conformity in Japanese society means that ADHD traits like distractibility or impulsivity can easily be misinterpreted as simply being ineffective or not trying hard enough. That's a huge concern for individuals with ADHD in that context.
Definitely. On the other hand, in a supportive environment, being open about your traits can actually lead to really positive advancements. You might get helpful reminders for forgetfulness or have tasks align more closely with your strengths, for instance.
But the risk is real too.
Oh, yes. The risk of discrimination or being misunderstood in less understanding workplaces, especially where awareness of neurodiversity is limited, is a real factor you have to weigh up.
So, what's the best approach here? Is there one?
Well, the key seems to be carefully assessing the workplace culture and the level of understanding before deciding to disclose. It might be wise to start by confiding in a trusted colleague or manager first, maybe, to gauge their reaction and the overall atmosphere.
Test the waters.
Exactly. Ultimately, it's a very personal decision, but it should be made with a clear understanding of how it might impact your work effectiveness and long-term career sustainability. And regardless of whether you disclose or not, that self-acceptance of your own traits is the crucial first step. You have to be okay with it yourself first.
It's interesting how our sources touch on the broader societal perspective in Japan, where ADHD is often viewed primarily as a disability, something that can cause significant concern for parents.
Yes, contrasting that with other countries where it's perhaps more readily accepted as just a natural human variation with more established support systems in place.
That cultural prioritization of being ordinary, maybe, over embracing individuality, can create additional pressures.
It really can. The goal, as our sources suggest, is to help shift that perception of ADHD away from being seen solely as a disorder towards seeing it as simply another aspect of personality that can come with significant strengths, like creativity, energy, flexibility.
And the act of disclosing, if you choose to do it after you've reached that point of self-acceptance, how is that framed?
It's framed as an act of courage, really, as a form of self-awareness rather than an admission of failure or weakness.
Yes, our powerful reframe.
It is. And it's emphasized that disclosure isn't about making excuses for shortcomings. It's about fostering mutual understanding, which can ultimately lead to improved communication, better productivity, and stronger working relationships.
Yeah.
Our sources even share a personal anecdote about someone receiving a late diagnosis and the validating reaction of a friend, highlighting that a diagnosis simply provides a name for a set of traits. It doesn't define you negatively. That self-acceptance really lightens the emotional load, and sharing your traits appropriately helps colleagues understand how you operate best.
This leads us to a really encouraging section: concrete examples of jobs or fields where ADHD traits can actually be a significant advantage, where they shine.
Yes. It's so important to recognize that those traits often undervalued in more traditional, standardized workplaces like that rapid idea generation. A strong sense of curiosity, a willingness to take initiative can be huge assets in more dynamic and creative fields.
Like what, for instance?
Well, think about design, video production, advertising. Our sources share a great story about an advertising planner whose fast-paced, seemingly random ideas were initially confusing to colleagues, but eventually became recognized as incredibly valuable and innovative. They just thought differently.
And that tendency towards impulsivity, which can sometimes be seen negatively.
Right, can actually drive initiative and quick action in roles like entrepreneurship or even sales. There's an example of a real estate salesperson who often followed their gut instincts, acted quickly, and successfully closed deals because of it.
Adaptability, too.
Adaptability is another key strength that really shines in fast-paced, unpredictable environments like event coordination, or managing live events. The ability to think on your feet and effectively handle unexpected issues, which can be a natural strength for many with ADHD, becomes a real advantage there.
There's an anecdote about that too, isn't there?
Yes, about a music event producer thriving on the chaos of unexpected problems. And it feels like education and mentorship. That high energy and empathy, often associated with ADHD, can help create really strong and impactful connections with students or mentees.
And of course, we've already talked about freelancing and self-employment as pathways where you can really tailor your work to your strengths and manage your own schedule effectively.
Exactly. The central idea seems to be that it's all about finding the right alignment between your environment, the role, and your specific traits.
And support matters hugely.
Absolutely. Even within the same profession, the level of understanding and support you receive from your colleagues and superiors can make a world of difference to your success and well-being. Strategies like remote work, where you control your environment more, or being open about your needs, can also contribute to a much better fit.
So the ideal scenario is,
The ideal scenario is when your inherent strengths are valued, you have flexible working arrangements, and you're in a workplace that understands and supports your unique way of operating. That's where individuals with ADHD can truly achieve remarkable results by embracing, not hiding, their unique characteristics.
finally, let's delve into the crucial aspect of career selection itself. Our sources use both a story of struggle and a story of success to really illustrate some of the key principles we've been discussing.
Yeah, these stories really underscore just how critical self-awareness is when making career choices. We hear about an individual who initially chose a stable sales job based mostly on societal expectations and a desire for security.
Yeah, the safe route.
Right. But he struggled significantly with the detailed administrative tasks inherent in the role, largely due to undiagnosed ADHD. This led to criticism from management, a big loss of confidence, and a pattern of repeatedly changing jobs, all stemming from that lack of self-understanding. He didn't know why he was struggling.
And the real turning point came
When he eventually found a role as a planner in advertising, a field that actually leveraged his natural creativity. Suddenly, those spontaneous thinking moments, the quick ideas that were previously seen as errors or distractions, were now valued as innovative contributions.
and the environment mattered too.
Hugely. He landed in a supportive environment where colleagues were understanding of his challenges with organization, for example, and helped him structure things. That made all the difference in his success. There's a specific example of him succeeding with a really unconventional campaign.
That success story really highlights the vital importance of not only understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, but also actively seeking out an environment where your strengths are appreciated and where you have the support you need in other areas.
Exactly. The key takeaways here are profound. Self-awareness is absolutely essential. Choosing the right environment is crucial, and even past failures or struggles aren't really failures. They can provide valuable insights that guide you towards a much better fit down the line.
It really reinforces the idea that for individuals with ADHD, accepting who you are and proactively seeking out those environments where you can truly leverage your unique way of thinking and working isn't just beneficial, it's absolutely key to building a fulfilling and successful career.
And that willingness to embrace experimentation, to try different work styles, maybe fail sometimes, and learn from both successes and setbacks is what ultimately leads to a career that feels both authentic and genuinely rewarding.
Which brings us perfectly to our final topic in this deep dive, achieving self-realization through your career. It's about that deeper sense of fulfillment, isn't it? That comes from truly aligning your work with your inherent traits, your passions, and your unique skills.
Yes, exactly. And the stories here are truly inspiring. We learn about someone, Mrs. A, who initially pursued a career in finance based mainly on external expectations, what she thought she should do.
And how did that go?
She experienced significant stress and dissatisfaction. It just wasn't her. But through career counseling, she rediscovered her deep interest in human connection and ultimately found a much more fulfilling career path as a counselor herself.
Wow, quite a shift.
And then there's Mr. B, who was in advertising but felt stifled by rigid corporate structures. He lost his passion, was eventually laid off, which felt like a disaster at the time, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's tough.
But then he embraced freelancing, consciously focusing on projects he genuinely enjoyed. This not only reignited his passion for the creative work itself, but also led to further fulfillment as he started mentoring younger creatives.
So what are the lessons from these stories?
Well, they really underscore that having a deep understanding of your own traits and your core values is foundational. and that maintaining a flexible approach to your career, being willing to reevaluate your path, maybe pivot, even make significant changes when necessary, is absolutely crucial.
And the environment again.
The choice of environment, as we've emphasized throughout our discussion, plays such a vital role. And often that deeper sense of self-fulfillment comes from feeling like you're making a meaningful contribution, whether it's to clients, society, or, as in Mr. B's case, to the next generation.
It's also important to remember maybe that setbacks and unexpected changes in your career path.
They can actually serve as powerful catalysts for this kind of self-discovery. They force you to reassess, and they can ultimately lead to greater fulfillment than you might have initially imagined on the safe path.
So the overarching message is,
The overarching message is that achieving self-realization through your career requires deep self-understanding, a willingness to be flexible and embrace change, and recognizing the inherent value in contributing to something larger than yourself.
so to bring this deep dive to a close, we've really dug into the importance of understanding and, crucially, leveraging your ADHD traits in the professional world. We've highlighted key insights about finding the right work environments, rethinking how we evaluate performance.
The surprising power of human connection, those focused strategies that work with your natural rhythms, not against them.
The possibilities of self-employment, optimizing your role in a team, communicating effectively about your needs, and making informed career selections that can ultimately lead to genuine self-fulfillment.
And now, for our final thought for you, the listener. Take a moment to consider one specific insight from this deep dive that particularly resonated with you. Just one thing. How might that shift your perspective on your current career or your overall approach to your work moving forward?
And perhaps, what's one small, concrete experiment you could try this week based on what we've explored together? It doesn't have to be huge.
Yeah, just a small step.
Thank you so much for sharing your sources with us and for joining us on this deep dive. We truly hope these insights empower you to continue exploring and applying these ideas in your own unique professional journey.